Thank you so much, Dr. Burns-Wallace, for joining us, and really just wanted to hop right in and hear a little bit about, you're still fairly new, right? This leadership mantle at the Kauffman Foundation in 2023, but tell us a little bit about kind of, how you came to the foundation, sort of your vision for the future of the foundation.
So, thank you so much. I will say that it has been a little over 2 years. And when 2 years flies by like it has in this role, it's just absolutely amazing. My background is in, government work, federal, state, and also higher education. So to step into this role in philanthropy really allowed me to bring a lot of those various experiences and resources to bear on issues that, across those sectors, we all think about, we talk about, we work together in. I'm just sitting in a different seat. The Kauffman Foundation is one in which has been integral in the Kansas City region, but across the nation. And so as I came in, we really were at a point in which we were ready to do a refresh. We took a step back and said, what are our priorities? What do they look like today? What are the needs of our communities in this moment around our priorities of education and entrepreneurship? And how do we help meet the moment that our communities sit in? So, a lot of our work in both our strategic refresh and reimagining our grant processes have really been community driven, community led, sharing with us what are the challenges that they are facing, thinking about what are then the systemic level issues that are driving underneath those challenges. And then how do we think about how we are best situated to be a part of solutions at the systemic level? Because as a larger, philanthropic organization, we sometimes can play a different role. We can be the convener, we can be that catalyst, we can leverage into the research and the learning that helps us unlock different conversations with policymakers. And so our work over, this kind of period of time really has been about taking a step back, making sure we're staying grounded in the priorities of the foundation and our legacy that Mr. K gave us, the power of education and entrepreneurship, to truly be a part of creating access to equitable economic mobility for all. And then in that moment, are we making sure that we're walking alongside the communities for which we serve and that we are being responsive not only to our own priorities, but that those align with those communities and their needs?
Yeah, this idea of driving systems change is really interesting,
Mhm.
especially I feel like there's kind of uniqueness in where there are so many big philanthropies, right, set in New York or DC or kind of these, sort of larger cities, right? And so being in Kansas City, which is an amazing city on the rise, I think gives you a unique perspective. And I want to dig more into that. Before we go there, I am curious, you said Mr. K, and as someone who's a little familiar with the foundation, I think one of the most unique parts of the Kauffman Foundation is this story of Mr. K. So give us a little bit of history and just, for folks who are not familiar, tell us the mission of the foundation.
Yes. So the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, we call him fondly Mr. K. He was a entrepreneur. He was someone who came out of this region, grew up in the Kansas City area, and came from humble beginnings, but had a vision, had an idea, started at a company in pharmaceuticals, and really realized that he could do more by actually investing in people and working with people to move that company, to give them the power. So as he built Marion Labs, his original pharmaceutical company, every employee had ownership in that company. Every employee saw that company as a part of who they were and a part of this community. He took that spirit and moved it over as he began to build the foundation. And it really was about pouring into the heart of Kansas City and creating access where individuals could control their own economic kind of future or their own economic prosperity. But to do that, there are certain things that we understand are levers to help, create equitable economic mobility. So for us, we sit at the core of understanding that equitable access to education, meaningful work and work
Mm,
pathways, and business ownership really are three levers that help an individual, a community, be able to build and sustain that economic mobility. Our work and the vision as I came in, we set kind of a 10-year goal to be able to say, we want Kansas City to be a model around equitable economic mobility. We want to be able to understand the conditions that are necessary for that individual and for that community. And it all stems from Mr. K's path of that entrepreneurial spirit, right? If you give an individual the tools, the resources, the access to the things that they need, and you challenge and empower them to do the uncommon thing, then they thrive. That community thrives. And that's the foundation for the work that we do now that really is about equitable economic mobility for all.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear that you guys are, focused on this issue of economic mobility because I think it is sort of the key conversation happening right now, whether you're in
Mhm.
philanthropy or you're a policymaker and trying to figure out what it is. And it looks a little different in community. And again,
Mhm.
sort of drawing on your experience being in Kansas City, can you speak a little bit to, why you guys have been so invested in entrepreneurship and small business ownership? I know that obviously some of that may come from that story that we just heard, but how do you see that as part of the economic mobility equation
Oh,
from
yeah.
where you sit, both in Kansas City and maybe even at that systems level that
Yeah.
you're talking about?
So, one of the things about entrepreneurship is if you look at various models and data around business ownership, small business ownership, the growth, the development, you can see both at that individual level that an individual business owner, in terms of actually building assets and building wealth, it is one of the fastest ways for an individual, particularly those that come from under resource backgrounds, that don't tend to have access to various other opportunities. It's one of the fastest ways to build wealth,
Hmm.
to be able to build an asset base. But
Hmm.
even more importantly, we also know that those businesses, by the data, that they are creating jobs, right? That they are creating opportunities for those assets to be leveraged into whether it's housing in that community, other economic development in that community. Businesses, small businesses in particular, can ground and build and solidify a neighborhood, right? They can be the stabilizing force in a neighborhood, whether that's around issues of public safety or housing or what have you, right? So, what we know and what we see both in the data, our history, and our story with Mr. K is that if you think about that business ownership, it has individual level impact, right? It has community level impact. It has greater economic development level impact. So when you invest around it, you're beginning to create an ecosystem that is building a different pathway for that economic mobility, both for the individual, their family, and also in community. And that is a part of the heart of why entrepreneurship has been a key part of the work that we've done. But, I sit and smile as we come up on the 250th anniversary of our country. If we really think about it, the entrepreneurial spirit is in our founding. Right? It is, if you think about how this country was built, how it moved across the country, the different developments of, different industries and sectors and the innovation and all of these things and the various waves that we've had across our country and the impact that our economy has had, and its growth, entrepreneurial mindset, right? That idea of taking that crazy wonky idea, throwing it against the wall, it fails 10 times, but on that 11th try, it works. And when it works, it becomes transformative, not only for that individual, but a lot of times for sectors, for communities, and sometimes even our country. That's the core of why you invest in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I love this connection between sort of, my phrase, not yours, democratic resilience and economic mobility, right?
Mhm.
Because we know small business owners are anchor institutions in their
Yes.
community, right? And we see in the research and the Gallup data, small business is one of the most trusted institutions across the country. It's trusted locally, but also we know that the vast majority of low wage and mid-wage workers actually work for small businesses. And so if we're going to
We
improve
do.
economic mobility in communities, we want to think about approaches to support small business and entrepreneurship entrepreneurship. And I think increasingly we're seeing, at least from the policy lens, this idea that, investing in community, investing at home is a good thing.
Mhm.
And, one of the questions I kind of have for you is, we still live in sort of this global world. And,
Yes.
one of the things that everyone is exciting about, right, is just, we have FIFA upcoming, we have the World Cup.
Yeah.
We also, as you know, we have the Olympics, coming to the United States soon, right? And so, we are starting to hear from small business owners, how can they think about taking advantage of those opportunities, right? These are huge potential opportunities that could transform communities, could leave a lot of wealth in communities.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful about how you think about it. And guess where the World Cup is coming is Kansas
Kansas
City.
City.
And so, wanted to hear a little bit from you, like, is the foundation thinking about that, and how do you support bringing that wealth in community without it sort of being extracted?
Yes. So not only are we thinking about it, we are right in the middle of it, right? And I say that because one of the things that we support directly are our entrepreneurial support organizations, ESOs, as we term them, right? And these organizations are helping our entrepreneurs at all different stages on a day-to-day basis, right? Startup or growth or development or technical assistance, right? So in this moment with FIFA, we have an ecosystem, right? We are lucky. Kansas City is a place where we think about ourselves as a city of entrepreneurs. We've tagged ourselves that. I don't know if anybody else is with us, but we have. And as a city of entrepreneurs, we literally that ecosystem leaned into this moment. So we
Mm,
have initiatives all across the city. We have our chambers that have come together that are looking not just to say, okay, FIFA is coming, how do we move these dollars? We have actually supported and stood up initiatives where we have held info sessions, bringing our businesses together and saying, here's how you prepare for the RFP. Here's how you think about things like wayfinding. Here's, different resources that are going to be needed. Do you understand, the time periods, things of that nature, providing information to our businesses more in a kind of a coordinated way, right? To think
mm,
about how do we maximize this moment in multiple ways. One, you become a supplier to FIFA because here are their needs, but also, do you understand the populations that are coming? Do you understand what services they're going to be looking for and needed? All of these different things. We directly, as someone who funds into like this space, we stood up with our capacity grants that our last round. We created an opportunity to say, if you have something going on that actually can help with our preparation for FIFA, apply for one of our capacity grants, right? And we
mm,
did. We have a couple of our entities that said we need, kind of a capacity grant to make sure that we can take the services we provide and provide them in various languages to be
mm,
able to be responsive to this community. We've worked with the city. The city has a few different storefronts across the city that have been vacant, and they are working to put small businesses in those storefronts
mm,
to be able to kind of both make sure our city can be responsive, but also look at starting a program to see how do we take collections of small business, use currently open storefronts, and create unique opportunities for them to have kind of retail space with a different kind of model. Well, we're backing some of that to be able to say, let's test this and pilot this in a moment that will have all of this kind of generative income coming in. But at the same time, let's make sure this isn't a one time thing. How do we then take the lessons learned from that pilot opportunity that we're using with FIFA to then say, now, how could we turn this into something that we are using vacant storefronts to be able to create small, co-creation spaces for our smaller businesses that don't need an individual retail space, right? So it's been a both and. So we've been excited because we've been able to partner with not only our traditional entrepreneur support organizations, but entities like the cities, the chambers, and not just our greater chamber, but we've supported our Heartland Black Chamber, our Asian American Chamber, where we are really ensuring that chambers that bring different representation and that smaller business, right? But I will
mm,
tell you, when the world descends on Kansas City, they're going to be looking for that little mom and pop shop, right? That, KCK, Kansas City, Kansas, like has apparently 67 taquerias, like these taco shops that are like world renowned. And we have a KCK taco tour that like we are so ready for everyone to join on. But we're amplifying that, right? We're saying, like, here are our businesses. but that coordinated effort is what is needed. You have to have coordination across the region to really leverage into a moment like this, right? And that effort has to include different sectors, right? So from philanthropy being able to stand in some gaps to our industry, to chambers, to our public entities like the city and state that are also standing up initiatives coordinated across cities and counties. Those are the types of things that allow a region to leverage into this moment. But I will tell you, at the heart of it, the only way you can support it, it has to be our small business network that is delivering the level and the number of services that are needed to meet that moment.
Super helpful. I'm putting dibs on my on your couch now because I know it's going to be hard to find housing. So I was here first. I think this idea of how to use philanthropic capital maybe in a way that a traditional investor can't, I think is really important. And I
Yes.
know that you guys are thinking about economic mobility even broader than small business. So tell me a little bit about like how you think about that broader component. You've talked about kind of the wraparound services, which is really important. You've talked about the sort of investment, sort of meeting the community where it's at, all very important. But I also know there's other pieces to this equation, the workforce piece. Are there other things that you guys are, sort of investing in, from thinking where, hey, we have a tremendous opportunity, right? Like as a foundation with philanthropic capital, to help move this economic mobility. So we've heard a lot about the small business and entrepreneurship pillar. What are the other pillars?
So for us, we start with our college access and completion. And
Mm,
then we move through to our workforce and career development along with entrepreneurship. And I think the way, particularly with our refresh, that we have come about this is that we don't want to look at them as like silos, right? So we don't actually talk about entrepreneurship by itself. Right? It's actually the intersection, right? College access and completion is still a component because that's part of our heart. One of the very first initiatives that the foundation had was Project Choice when Mr. K went back to his original high school and took eighth grade kids and said, if you complete high school, I'm going to pay for you to go to college, right? So that's at our heart of our mission, that college access and completion, particularly for students that come from lower income, first gen backgrounds, Black and Brown students, that those rates of college going are lower. It's an intentionality around continuing to get that next level of education that prepares them to walk that path around controlling their own economic mobility. But we also know and believe in one of our newer pillars of priorities is in workforce and career development, because we know that that is interconnected, that those pathways post K 12 can be varied, right? That educational pathway, some is that 4 year degree. For others, it can be a 2 year. It's a credential, it is training, and ensuring that we are thinking about those early and often. One of our programs reaches all the way back down into high school, and we're creating opportunities for high school students to have real world experiences, real world learning, right, on a day to day basis in their high school environment. But we're also bringing those employers to the high school environment to say, this is your future pipeline, right? And those employers are large in our region, right? Big names that you would recognize, all the like a Garment, all the way down to that small mom and pop operation that is that entrepreneur. And all across that spectrum, they're in our high schools beginning to understand what that pipeline of talent looks like. When you connect that thread all the way through, where we're talking about what is that educational pathway, what is the workforce and career development connectivity tissue in our environment, and then how do we layer our business opportunities through it, you begin to create a larger ecosystem that really allows you to move levers for systemic change. And so our work has been about that integration of those things at that core. When those come together, it can be the sweet spot. We do things all around it, but we also believe in research, learning, and evaluation around this work. And that's one of the things that we've invested in for years. Many people know about our Kauffman indicators. We will be celebrating 30 years next year. These are things that have given insight around entrepreneurship, for over 30 years. And we are refreshing them next year, pushing a new set of data out. But we're known for that work in entrepreneurship. We are building our muscle to do even more of that research and that type of data where we're understanding conditions around workforce and career, and also around college access and completion. And again, looking for the synergies where all of those come together.
That's super helpful. I've got just two more questions for you, and I'm
Okay.
going to give you a chance in the close to talk about how people can partner with Kauffman. I think there's
Okay.
a broader, always broader ways to partner. But I think before, and this, I told you there might be some curveballs. You actually brought it up. I'm really interested in this idea of America's 250 and turning the corner. And I think, regardless of kind of where you are, there are some people who are very excited about the future of our country. And there's some people who are quite frankly like very scared in this moment, right? And I think economic anxiety might be drawing a lot of that, or at least what we're seeing in the data, right? And so I think this vision around the foundation's issue, of supporting economic mobility is key, right? And also Kansas City being located where you are, such
Mhm.
unique lessons. And I think also, for businesses and economic actors, such an opportunity to kind of, bring people together. And so you talked,
Mhm.
about approaching America's 250, and it feels like such a unique opportunity, right, for organizations like yours, for business leaders, for entrepreneurs to step in. How are you thinking about that, given this moment where we are in the country, and this idea that some people are really excited and feeling really good about where they are, and then some people are feeling, like they're really struggling, right? Or maybe even scared. And so it feels like America's 250 presents an opportunity for an organization like yours. I don't know if that's right, but how are you thinking about it?
I think we think it does, right? And part of it is um, it really does go back to our beginning, right?
Mm,
Because our founder came from those humble beginnings, part of the reason to think about levers like education
mm,
and entrepreneurship was because the work is not about here are all the things that are out there, here's working, here's what's not. It
mm,
is about at the core of our work, access and opportunity, right?
mhm,
Because when you can unlock systems that create greater access, right?
mm,
You give people hope because you are like, here is the tools for you to do what you want and need to do to be successful,
mm,
right? Here is the knowledge. Here is the access to the resources. And those resources can be dollars. Those resources also can be technical assistance. Those resources could be a credential, right? When you give an individual the ability to get the training or credential, right, you give them their own control, right? Better control over the way they can navigate their future, the possibilities of their future. When you give them knowledge, right? Mr. K got sick at a very early age and spent a year in bed and read like hundreds, right, of books. He said it unlocked in his mind this idea of like when that knowledge is power, but truly it is when you give a person that knowledge, you can't take the knowledge away from them. And
yeah.
that knowledge allows them to think differently, to move differently, to ask
Mm,
questions differently, to create space and opportunity and hope
mm,
differently because they now have a set of tools, knowledge, or resources that allows them to say, this could be a challenging moment.
mhm,
What do I need to know? What questions do I need to ask? What do I need to have available to me, my family, my community for future success?
mm,
To survive and more importantly, to thrive. So I say all that to say in this moment, the reason that I think for us, the 250 is one in which we want to lean into. It's not because, entrepreneurship for entrepreneurship's sake, but it's because the power of entrepreneurship is putting in the hands of the individual person the power to control their future differently, the resources and the knowledge to say, I can see my path through and my path is different because of this. That is that entrepreneurial spirit. That is the spirit of Ewing Marion Kauffman and this foundation. And I hope that 250 allows us to sit in spaces and places where we remember how we got here was by being innovative. How we got here was by moving and learning together,
mm,
and it wasn't always easy, but in this moment, we have to hearken back to who we are as a country, as a people,
mm,
where we're going, and all that we've been through. But at the end of the day, the power of our country is the people of
mm,
this country. And
mm,
that's why when you invest in those people, that is the heart and why the 250 still has to have the power of opportunity for us.
yeah. Man, I kind of want to end it there, but I have to ask the big question, and it's the money question.
Okay, give me the
You know,
money question.
which no, but I joke. I think too many people think about philanthropy as grants, grants, grants. And
Mm,
so tell us obviously how people get
yes.
grants, but I think tell us more importantly, like how do people partner with the foundation? You talked about the power of convening. You talked about the power of technical assistance, and I'm sure you guys think of yourselves more as a community institution that does many things rather than folks who just hand out money. So tell
Yes.
us how to get money, but then also tell us really about the important role that you guys play, and more importantly, how people who are reading this or listening to this can partner with you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And so, what I will say is check us out at Kauffman.org. You will see there, of course, our funding opportunities. And so, our grants, we have grant cycles. We talk about everything from capacity to projects to research grants, as well as coalition grants under our collective impact. And we lay out when you can apply to your grants, what the level of grants are, where those priorities lie. So, check that out because first and foremost, we really are a funder. Our dollars are to leverage into this work to be able to elevate work that is having demonstrated impact on
Mm,
systemic level change. So the dollars do matter. But the power of the platform of being in philanthropy and being an institution like ours, it allows us also to convene, to publish papers, research, policy papers where we're talking about things and conditions that you need to understand that impact. And we've been doing that for years. So there's also a body of that research. We continue to build on that, as I mentioned, like our Kauffman indicators coming back out. So also look at some of that work that could be useful tools and resources. But we convene on any number of areas and issues. Sometimes it's with funder partners, sometimes it's with policymakers, sometimes it's with other organizations like the Entrepreneurship Funders Network, right? Which is a national funder an initiative that brings together those who are funding into entrepreneurship. So we're in many different places and spaces. So I always say, if you're looking to figure out and find out what we're doing, how to partner with us, what the work looks like, just check us out at Kauffman.org. But most importantly, what I will say is that our role is to amplify the good, impactful work, right? We say we want Kansas City to be a model, a true model for economic mobility. To do that, we have to be part of that amplification, telling the stories, identifying the good work, funding into it. We do a lot of our work in this local region, but we also have national funded initiatives as well. So it's a both and, but at our core, equitable economic mobility, dollars, technical assistance, trainings, convenings across the board. We fund and support into many of those different things. But just check us out and see if there's something there that's of interest and drop us a note. We'd love to hear from you.
awesome. Thank you, Dr. Burns-Wallace. We really appreciate the time.
Thank you.